Appreciate y'all showing up. And I don't think this man, I introduced him last time. I'm not going to go through the same thing again because everybody knows this guy. So Jody, come on up. And we'll let you get started.
First, I have a real important thing to do. Hey, hi. But I know where my bread's buttered, okay? So, that's right. How many of y'all were here for the first go-round? Okay, so there are some of y'all that basically don't know how this whole organization got started. Am I correct? All right. There, you turn around and look at those pictures on the wall up there. All right. There's a guy on the very end down there. He's right down there. His name's Harrison Wells. Harrison Wells owned a glass and paint company in downtown Pensacola. The Krewe of Lafitte was started by 19 businessmen. Those 19 businessmen wanted to get together in conjunction with the Fiesta of Five Flags. Fiesta of Five Flags was founded in 1949. The Krewe of Lafitte was founded in, keep this, July 15th, 1954. That was the first parade. The first ball was not until 1 year later in 1955. Harrison, he promoted this whole thing up and down Palafox Street. The little guy that's next to him up there that looks like Colonel Sanders, that's Johnny Cox. Johnny Cox owned two shoe stores downtown. They were ladies' shoes. Johnny Cox's shoes and Cindy's. They used to meet in the back of Johnny's shoe shop, and they would cook and they would eat. And these are not our stars or our guest speakers coming out the door, by the way. Okay, these would soon be has-beens. By the way, Julie, I just wanted to let you know, when you came out of the restroom a while ago and I followed you in there were 3 guys in the shower sitting in there clapping, okay? But anyway, that's how it all. Harrison, he started promoting this thing and everything else, and he collected him a bunch of businessmen. One of the things they used to do is, that guy right there is named Earl Cronin. The Jim Robinson Equestrian Center, that's Jim Robinson right there next to him. Both of those gentlemen were bankers. So what they would do is when they decided to put on the coronation, they would go down there and they would float a 90-day installment interest-free loan at the bank. And they would take that money and they would put coronation on. Then they'd sell tickets. And when it was all over with, then they'd pay the loan off. So going into it, they didn't have any money. But anyway, so that's pretty much it. The rest of them, as they came along over the years and everything else, that gentleman right there is Jack Rosenbaum. He was the last original initial member of the Krewe of Lafitte that came in. He passed away in about 1997. And the reason I know that is because I was on the board then. Okay. The other people up there were all business people. The one that's sitting up there that looks like he's got a tuxedo on, that Sherman Barnes. Sherman Barnes, he owned a fence company. He was a county commissioner, and he even got appointed as a sheriff of Escambia County one time by the governor, believe it or not. So, but anyway, as they developed it, they built the floats. Some of y'all have been in the old building over here, I'm sure. If you look up on the wall up there, there's a set of wheels up there and what looks like a yoke and all that. Those were the original, or what the original floats looked like. They wanted to take, and what their idea was the Krewe would be a celebration in conjunction with Fiesta. They wanted to put on a night parade. So, 1954. There wasn't no such things as generators then, was it? Nope. But how are we going to put on a night parade? What they did was they put lights on those floats, and they put banks of car batteries. And they hooked those lights to car batteries. And they ran the parade that way, as a lighted parade. At that point in time, the Krewe of Lafitte came to be known as Pensacola's only illuminated parade. And for years it was that way. Now there's other ones, Christmas parades and all that, but that's how it all basically got started with them. Then through the years, I think some of y'all that was in here, let me ask anybody in here first, let me ask you a trivia question. Why do pirates wear eye patches? Why does a pirate wear an eye patch? If you're on the board, you don't count.
To save night vision.
When you go in a dark place, you switch it over and you've got better vision in the dark.
And that's because of
Night vision.
they didn't have lights on those ships back then. So when they came out of the daylight and went below, they couldn't, they'd wear that patch over one eye. And they already had night vision. Most people think it's because they got in sword fights and I got kicked out, okay? It was either that or they belonged to the crew of Lafitte and their ass fell off of a float and go foul pipe straight. One or the other. Huh? I heard my name back there, do what? That's what it was. But there's been some other interesting things that have went on through the years of the crew. Y'all heard me tell the story the last time about the strippers that came out of trailers. Oh, yeah. We used to stage at the auditorium, and we would go up Palafox Street, and the Gray Ghost at that time was the only one that actually had a cannon on it. And the bad boys of the crew back then were the Dragon and the Gray Ghost. You didn't get on either float unless somebody was on that float when you got in the crew and they knew you and they put you on the float. So you pulled up the trailers and you shot the cannon. Here they come. So one night the cannon went off. A couple of them on the Dragon decided to put a couple of girls on the float and they went around the parade route. Well, it just so happened one of them's wife was in the court. And that's back when what they used to do was they would have the parade, and when it came around to the San Carlos Hotel, the maids and the queen would come out on the balcony of the San Carlos Hotel. Number one that had the Knights and Lafitte, that float would stop, and then they would toast the Knights and the queen, the maids and the queen, the Knights would. So it just so happened when she was standing there, she looked down and they were hiding. There it went. Well, and then there's one time, where'd that one? Y'all find my picture. There's a handsome guy in here, okay? There I am. See this gentleman right here next to me? That's Cliff Andrews. I followed Cliff up the board. But anyway, there was a time that I had just gotten on the board. I'll tell y'all this while we're waiting on him. I'm standing at the auditorium, and all of a sudden somebody comes by. Now y'all gotta remember, I just got on the board. And they go, y'all excuse me for this, but they said, y'all see that shit going on back there on that float? And I went, no. And I said, go back there and look. So I go back there, and sure enough, it's the Gray Ghost. So I get up on the Gray Ghost, and there are two young ladies from Sammy's on the Gray Ghost. And they are putting on a show for everybody on the Gray Ghost. A captive audience, no less. So I'm standing there, and all of a sudden when I got there, I hear this, oh shit, here comes Jody. So I get up on the float, and they're standing there, and I'm looking at them, and I went, well, hello, ladies. They said, hey. I said, are we having a good time? Yes, sir, we're having a real good time. I said, how is it that y'all came to be down here tonight on this particular float? And the answer was, we got an invitation. And I said, is that right? And they said, yes. And I said, well, who was it from? Cliff Andrews and Jody Villar. I said, well, just exactly what did Jody Villar look like? And they said, well, he's about this tall, and he's got red hair, and he's kind of chubby, and he's got little chubby cheeks and everything else. Well, come to find out it was Larry Fordham and Marty Marine. That was that was that. But yeah. But over the years, as long as I've been here, there's been a lot of exciting things that's went on. This man I'll tell you all this. That man right there, his name is Roy Mothershed. He was Lafitte. Byron Gilbert is his son-in-law. Lynn, naturally, is his daughter. The building next door, which is 620, okay, when it was built, Roy Mothershed went to the bank and took out a second loan on his house to have that building built. And his wife was named Jody, and she was not real happy with him when he got on. So they went on and they built 620. Believe it or not, all of the floats used to go in 620. We did not have the sword back then. We did not have the baby raven back then. But we had everything else. And what we would do was when we'd come back, those floats, we put them in there, we set them sideways in there, this way. And then what was left over, we would run them down the middle. And that's how we stuck them all in there. All the work on the floats went on over there in that building is what happened. So, but the rest of it is, what you see up there on that wall is just pure history. I mean, everything up there, for all those that, I'm sure all y'all know by now or figured it out, the top row are all past presidents. The second row underneath them are their Lafitte's that they picked. Okay, and then we have over here, they started doing them smaller in when they still give them to them, but there was a bigger picture. But because of the weather and all that, they reduced them. And those are all of our queens up there with their Lafitte's. And those ladies have served us well over the years. They really have. Without those queens, we would not look half as good standing there in Olympic costumes. That's for sure. So the rest of it, the sword came about later. The baby raven that you see out here that they're redoing now, that float was originally built when Louis Brown, who was supposed to be here tonight, but Louis got hooked up, and if you look back there, Louis is right there. That's Louis. Louis, we got hooked up with a bunch over in Mississippi, and y'all probably heard tales about the Mississippi trips. But what it used to be was we started going over there, and Treasure Bay was open, was a casino. So we went over there, and they had this clock over the bar, and it was a pirate ship. Had little pirate guys on it, and every hour on the hour that clock would go off. So we took pictures of that pirate ship. All right. And then when we came back, we developed all those 35mm pictures, and we put them on a sheet of plywood. And where we went to, Robert Brown, who is our president now, his daddy was Tommy. Tommy is a past president, past Lafitte. That's Tommy right there. I was Tommy's Lafitte. He picked me. But we went to his shop and we built the baby raven off of those pictures. Is how the baby raven came about. So then we started traveling. Well, we went to Bradenton with it. We naturally went to Fort Walton with it. And if you will Lafitte McLean on the court come Mardi Gras, go ahead and get your running shoes on. Because Friday night, we did everything here. Lafitte McLean would come back down here for the fish fry on Saturday afternoon. You would leave here and you would go to Mobile. You went to a cocktail party in Mobile and dinner that night. You got up Sunday morning in Mobile, went to a gift exchange. You got off a float there, Joe Kane parade, the Widows of Joe Kane. Their parade was on Sunday afternoon if you was in that parade. You got off of the float, you went to another ball that night in Mobile. You left Mobile at 1 o'clock in the morning and you went to Gulfport, Mississippi. And you hope like hell somebody made your room reservation for you, okay? So, but you did that, and then once you did that, you got up Monday, it was kind of a play day. Tuesday, you got up, went to Biloxi, you were in about a 2.5 hour parade in Biloxi. Come back, got something to eat, and after that, you come back at 6 o'clock that night, you were in a Gulfport, Mardi Gras parade in Gulfport. Got up Wednesday morning and come home there, without a doubt. What's that back there? Yeah, they've been there. Yeah, Mickey was in that, was the one in Corks and and Lexi, and Dennis, all of They were in one of those courts with us when we made that trip, so. But over the years, like I said, every one of them that's up there has made a contribution. The overall goal of a lot of those presidents up there was the simple fact that the next year we would make it better, and the next year we would make it better. So y'all all heard about the board of trustees for Lafitte, right? All right, you see that gentleman right up there in that red blazer right there? That's Bobby Tronu. Bobby Tronu was the past president. Bobby Tronu was the past Lafitte. He's the third one from the end down there in that black costume. I think he was Lafitte, 43rd, something like that, because I was a float captain. So, but anyway, Bobby became the president. Well, what happened was they got to thinking that if something should happen, the crew needed what they call basically a rainy day fund. Okay, because the way it's set up is the board of directors run the day-to-day operation of the crew of Lafitte, and the board of trustees are in charge of the property now. Well, each one of these past presidents back up into here, what they did was they started sloughing money off every year. And they put it in a shoebox. And then the shoebox got passed from one president to the other. Okay, well, all of a sudden, Bobby becomes the president. They go in there. That's Louis Brown's brother, Arthur, that's next to him, and Boudreaux on the other side of him, Lou Boudreaux. And both of them, you take them two, and a full house couldn't beat that pair any day of the week, okay? Anyway, Arthur goes in there and hands Bobby this shoebox. That shoebox had $10,000 in it. So now they're starting to think, well, how are we going to explain to the membership that we come up with $10,000? So all of a sudden they went, well, we had a real good year this year. We managed to just keep things down, and all of a sudden we think we need this board of trustees, okay? So they gave them the $10,000, and that's where it came from. That's how the trustees got started. The trustees are an intricate part of this organization, because what it does is the trustees will take, and it keeps them, if something goes wrong with one of these buildings, then it's up to the trustees to take care of it. The board of directors doesn't have to come out of their pocket, okay? The trustees have a pot of money, so you guys, when y'all go to these meetings, and you hear Johnny Blackman, who's the chairman of the trustees, stand up there and give that trustee report. Keep in mind what that is that's a pot of money, and everybody goes, oh yeah, well, let's have a party, right? Well, what it does is it keeps the board of directors from having to walk into a general membership meeting and go, hey folks, we need $1,000 assessment for everybody because we got to do something. Okay? That's where your trustees came to be. But some of those people up there are doctors, some of them are lawyers, some of them are just regular people, that's come along, and that's the way the whole thing was designed. It was to go ahead and have a parade, and it's just blossomed from there on out. But a lot of it you have to also remember, not only those people, you have to remember the people that were on the boards with them. Okay, because not only one person can do all of this. It takes that whole board to work it. But more importantly, it takes the membership to fuel it. The membership, you the guys, the membership, y'all have got to fuel this thing to that board and help that board to make this thing work. And you ladies, don't think you left out. Because I'm telling you, if it wasn't for y'all, you'd probably walk into a Fiesta Coronation, there'd be 3 Miller Lite cans with sticks sticking out of the car. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Roadside wildflowers.
Yeah, roadside wildflowers. Yeah, that's it. That's cool. So,
Glad they went Miller Lite, not Bud Light.
well,
Yeah.
thing about it is, if you drink Bud Light though, if you play in a golf tournament, they'll let you hit from the ladies' too, okay? Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much, well, I thought our guests had arrived, they're being fashionable with the late. So, they're not gonna make it.
You're lined up in a roadblock.
Are they? Did ice catch them finally? Huh? I son got them all, huh? So, all right, but, well, we can go back, I mean, I can tell y'all all kind of stories in it, for those of y'all that wasn't here before, like the time we set the Gray Ghost on fire. So, the cannons, they took, they had the cannons and everything else, and those cannons, what they do is you load black powder in them, the shells, there's nothing but the primer. We used to have this thing on the front, the Gray Ghost was the only one that actually had a cannon on it for years. So anyway, it was about, the whole thing was about that long. It was called a regatta starter pistol. And it was dangerous because what you had to do with it was you took a shell and you shoved it in there, and then you closed it. And it had this pin about that big, you pulled it, and it had a hinge on it, had a ring on it. But you couldn't pull the ring back and set it. You had to close it first, then you had to pull it back. Okay? Well, then when you got ready to shoot it, you just turned it loose and you hit that primer and it was gone. So we, I had a buddy of mine at the time that was at PJC, was a chemist. So we decided we was going to figure it out. And so I called him up and I said, hey, bud, tell me how much black powder you can put in a shell for a lot of smoke and a lot of noise, okay, like rattle windows. So he told me, so we loaded them up. Well, first of all, y'all all know there's no drinking allowed on the floats, right? Of course. No drinking on the float, okay? All right, somewhere in parade routes, there's this immaculate conception, all right? This stuff just appears. But anyway, we're up there. Bob fired that thing, Bob Barnes fired that cannon, and he did. It set the whole front end of the Gray Ghost on fire. So we're down there, and we got all this beer underneath it, and we're pouring this beer all over this place. Okay, we're putting this fire out. So we get off the float at the auditorium, and as soon as we get off the float, we get greeted by, tell us what happened and how the float caught on fire. I went, what fire? They said, the fire on the Gray Ghost. And I said, I have no knowledge of any fire on the Gray Ghost, okay? So, but they, yes, sir. Guess what? Guess what?
We're stuck with you.
Y'all are stuck on my ass, okay? Once again, I guess it's the Jody show. But does anybody really have any questions about, about the crew, anything about the crew? I mean, I've been in the crew. Everybody knows a day or two. All right. I'm pushing 40 years in the crew. So, all these people up here, a lot of them I served on the board of directors with. A lot of them I knew. Some of them I even knew when I was a child and everything else. And grew up around them and everything else. Steve Arnold, the third one from the end of there, board. They named him, Bobby and them named him Skateboard. That's that gentleman right there. They named him Skateboard because every time we went somewhere, he would disappear. And you had to go find him, okay? And then next thing you know, all of a sudden you'd be looking for him, he'd come skating right on in there. Oh, here, where y'all been? Where you been at, Stacey? I can't tell you. But yes, sir.
Tell everyone why we have to wear a mask for the.
The mask for the, okay, all right. The idea behind the mask was, and the purpose for that, gentlemen, make sure you understand this, all right, is that if something should happen and somebody decides that they want to sue the crew, the only description they have was it was a guy in a brightly colored costume with a mask on. Okay? And they can't come get you personally. Because Arthur Brown, once again, the president up there, he did not have a good coronation when he was the president. And that is because somebody, the cannons on the Gray Ghost after before and then the regatta starter pistol started afterwards. Then I had them made a different way because the board took the cannons off the floats altogether. Okay, after the regatta starter pistols. But anyway, poor old Arthur was down at the auditorium. And there used to be a traffic sergeant at the city called police department by the name of Jerry Fox. He was police one time. He was in charge of traffic. He goes down there and he finds him. He says, "Where's the president?" So they go get Arthur. Arthur comes out there and Jerry says, "I need to talk to you." He said, "About what?" He said, somebody put a beer can in that cannon and shot it out and hit a person upside the head on the parade route. So, back then, the incident before that is when they took 2 bottles of baby powder and stuck it in one of the cannons and fired it. Uh-huh. Johnson & Johnson baby powder down that barrel it went. Then they fired it. So, they took the cannons off the float, and after we set it on fire and everything else.
Shells.
But with glitter,
Glitter bombs.
yeah. But, so what I did was, Bill McCurdy, who was supposed to be here tonight with us, Bill's son-in-law is a welder. So once again, Bob Barnes, my cohort, he's no longer in the crew. In fact, his wife was up there. She was my queen when I was a president. But anyway, we decided that what we would do is we would go to the pawn shop and we would buy a single barrel, single shot, 12-gauge shotguns. And then we took them to Bill McCurdy's son-in-law and we got him to cut the barrels down and then weld a barrel about this big around on it. And we put a screen on the end of it. So then I had to come down here with one of them. We had 4 of them made. And so I had to come down here with one of them and go to a board of directors meeting and walk in there and sit it on the table. And I had to convince the board that this thing was foolproof. Okay? Nobody, no matter who it was, an idiot could fire this thing and nothing could happen. So then they turned around and they said, well, here's the condition. We'll put them back under this condition. I said, what's that? You pick the people that's going to shoot them. I said, okay, we can do that. So the cannons went back and they've been here ever since. The main reason, one of the things though, is that the cannon on number 1, as we say, it announces Lafitte. When that float rolls, the cannon goes off. And that's one of the announcements for Lafitte and his court and the rest of his pirates coming. Just to let them know. That's where Lafitte's at. Anybody got any questions about anything? Go ahead.
Was that a full or empty beer can that they launched?
It was about half
It was
full.
empty.
It was about half full.
Oh,
It back in there, but it wasn't a Bud Light one, so it didn't hit, one of them in the head. Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah. Kurt?
Question, to your knowledge, what was the original pros that came off the parades?
That was in 50.
They got these beads. They actually threw beads back then, but they went to Mobile, and these beads, they were
Filter beads.
they were really they were these real cheap beads. I mean, beads then back then, you could get them there with like 144 strands of beads, in one bag.
Okay.
And all of them were about this big around, and they were about that long. Yeah. And I mean, you pull them out and they'd all tangle up, so then you get pissed off and you just fall over because, and I mean, everything in there had made in China on it or Japan or someplace, but they had them, but they were just, I mean, they were something. Howard, Frank's brother, Howard used to buy them. We used to call them filter beads, because that's all Howard would buy, the cheap ass beads. So before Howard, he bought himself 3 cases of them one night and came down here. He parked this Explorer over there in front of the building. So he goes and puts his beads in the back of it. And goes inside and says something, try to go take his beads out of it. And I put it back in the building. So he leaves, and a few minutes later he comes back and he said, I thought I put them beads in there. I said, I thought you did too, Howard. I said, they're sitting right there. You must have left them. So Howard loads them back up, and then somebody said something to him, so I went and took them out again, and I put them down there again. So he drives off every time before Howard finally got his beads. But yeah, they had, and they used to throw candy. Big thing was they threw candy back then. And it would have been probably around, let me think, I would put it 2000. Go back to about 1998, 99, somewhere along in there. We used to do 2 parades a year. So I don't know if any of y'all know that or not. We used to do a Mardi Gras parade and we did a Fiesta parade. And so those both went on. And then what happened with it was the Fiesta parade, there's nobody downtown. People are on vacations. People's got things going on. People's got children doing stuff. And when you put one of these parades on, believe it or not, it takes quite a bit of money between the insurance, the city, and the city constantly has added over the years. When I first got, you didn't have to have barricades, you didn't have to have toilets. You had to have cleanup, you had to have somebody clean up the parade route. But that was basically about it. And then the next thing you know, you go down there and you have to have a proof of insurance for every event that you're gonna do. You have to have barricades. You have to have portalettes. Okay? Then they pass the city ordinance that says that because you've pulled a special events permit to have that parade, you are now responsible for cleanup of one block on both sides of that parade route. Now they've added the sign to state where that road's gonna be closed. They've added that to it.
And the EMF.
Yeah, and then EMF. So they've, and they're constantly, but anyway, it got to where when you had a Fiesta parade, there wasn't anybody down there to throw to, really. I mean, there just wasn't. So when I was on the board, we decided to cut the Fiesta parade out because you're spending money, and I mean, it's just crazy. You could put it somewhere else. You could put it to to make the coronation better. You could make Mardi Gras better. Mardi Gras is the party. I mean, that's it, So that's the reason that the Fiesta parade was no longer in existence and everything else is because it got way too much. And we decided back then to cut that parade out. But somewhere along in there, when we still had that Fiesta parade, they threw candy. Well, what we used to do is that the city of Pensacola had what they called I called him a trash trooper, okay? He tried to go to be a city policeman, but he just couldn't quite cut it. But anyway, so he was a litter officer. So he would come down to the auditorium and he would pick you up and you would ride the parade route, okay? Then you clean the parade route. Well, then Sunday morning, he would get this phone call because he would get up Sunday morning and he would go ride the parade route. And then he would call because we used to have a phone over there, believe it or not. And he would call down there and he would say, there's trash here, trash there. So we were back down there on Sunday morning picking up trash. They called something, the parking garage on Jefferson Street was full of it. All right, so we had to go do it. So when I got parades and everything, he came to the auditorium and he said, we'll go ride the parade route. I said, okay. So we went and rode it. So he takes me back, dropped me off. I get out of the car and I looked at him and I said, 11 o'clock, you need to be back here. He said, I don't need to be back here at 11 o'clock. And I said, oh, but you do. I said, because me and you going to ride the parade route after it's over with and cleaned up. And we're not going to come back down here tomorrow. And he said, well, I got some people coming to my house for dinner. I said, well, they can eat without your ass. I mean, it's just that simple, buddy. Okay. And he goes, well, I'm not coming. I said, well, that's okay. Because when you call, don't call. Because then Monday morning, I'm going to be up there because he was housed at the garage. I said, I'm going to be in your boss's office telling her that you refused to come back down here. So what are you going to do? So anyway, he met me at 11 o'clock.
Jody,
So, yes, sir.
we have a request for the Tidy Bowl story,
The Tidy Bowl story.
and Nellie the float that had the Tidy Bowl balloon.
Oh, the fort? Or are you talking about
They have the river.
no, that was in fact, what was it? The waterfall.
Yeah.
It was the waterfall. The fort, well, it was kind of on the fort, but the fort got rebuilt.
Right.
But we had one in,
Before.
yeah, we had one that had a waterfall on it. And we put suds in it. Soap suds. Yeah, and guess what happened? I'll give you 3 guesses. That's kind of like putting the tide in a dishwasher at home, okay? Yeah, but yeah, that was it. Yeah, Lexi.
A young child, Daddy would come hey, and he would tell me, if I remember this right, did y'all used to have celebrities
Yeah,
Be in the parade or parade marshals?
yeah, they were, back then, they would every now and then, what it was that a lot of them would stay because the Fiesta Parade, when it all got started, the Fiesta Parade was on Thursdays, is what it was, and they would have the Fiesta Parade, and it was always, about 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. The Krewe Lafitte Parade was the last event of Fiesta back then, and it was always at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. And then they would leave and go to the auditorium and have the ball. What we used to do back then, and then I'll get back to you, is the floats we would pull up out of here. The municipal auditorium was at the dead end of Palafox. Everybody remembers it? Okay. We used to we'd take the floats and we'd bring them down there, and we'd bring them around the auditorium, stage them all the way around it. And then everybody was in the auditorium, and they'd have a few minutes from happy hour, and they'd go get their butt on the float. And then, the angel of alcohol would provide the rest of it on the float and everything. But from there, so then we'd load the floats. And the parade route back then was you went up Palafox Street, the government to Jefferson to Garden, back to Palafox. Then all the way up Palafox Street, around White Street, and straight back down. So they'd take us back to the auditorium, and when we got off at the auditorium, okay? Then they would bring the floats back here.
Yeah.
So that was it. But Fiesta had theirs on Thursdays. Well, they used to have these celebrities that would come to town that were parade marshals, for the Fiesta parade. And a lot of of times would stay. And then they would ride in the Krewe Lafitte parade. The one that everybody, I think, probably remembered the most was, that's the reason I don't have one of these when I do the coronation. I got mine attached to me.
Where's
Anyway.
yours?
So anyway, Philip Morris cigarettes. How many people remember Philip Morris cigarettes? Okay. All right. Years ago, they used to have a commercial on TV. And they had a little guy, his name was Johnny. He was about this big, and he looked like a doorman. He wore a pillbox hat and a little suit and everything else. And he was the man. I mean, just about every other year they would have Johnny here, because what he would do was on the commercials and everything else, he would stand out in front of hotels. Like I said, he looked like a doorman. And somebody would say something about Philip Morris cigarettes. And he would holler, then he'd take that hand and put it up there, and he'd holler, "Last call for Philip Morris." So they'd bring him in here. They put him on a convertible. And you could stand on the street corner and you could holler, "Johnny, give me a call." And he'd do it. Okay? So he was one of the main attractions that they used to have back then. But they had others that would come to town.
Go from the love boat, and I was mad at my daddy because he got to
Yeah.
get an autograph. Do it.
He was. You're right. Dalton was one of them. Yeah, he was there. There were several other ones. So, yeah, but you're exactly right. But there, yes, sir.
Johnny, can you talk about,
That's all right.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Look, you have to
Can you
remember.
talk about the significance of the capes and the feathers and the hats?
Yeah,
There's some members and some prospects in here.
We used to, when you first got into cruelty, okay, they used to give you these costumes, and they give you these little hats, make you look like you worked in William John Silver's and was this way and everything else. So you couldn't diverse from those. I mean, that was it, buddy. And I mean, they had costumes. They used to have some of them up there. They had costumes up there that had shamrocks on it. There's a picture back in that boardroom's got one. But they had these little loud stripes on them and everything else. I mean, hell, you didn't have to worry about seeing that you could hear that crap coming at you, okay? So anyway, but that's all they did. And so we rocked along with them old crazy hats and everything else. And then when I got costumed, I said it in the first board meeting, I said, "I'm getting rid of them hats." They said, "You can't." I said, "Oh, but watch this shit, okay?" So I got rid of the hats, and basically what they have now, yeah. Then what'll end up happening is when you became a float captain, you got your new uniform or costume, and that had one feather in it, okay? So then, after that, if you got picked, you became a knight. And then once you became a knight, the knight's costume, their hats had two feathers in it, and they had a short cape. The board of directors have always had long cape, okay? And the rule is when you went to a dance, like the coronation, the people that you saw in there that had capes on, long cape, was either a past president, a past Lafitte, or a current board of directors. Those were the only people that wore cape back then, okay? And so that was it. So then you got a short cape. Well, actually, you only wore that cape one time, which was at the coronation that time. But that was it. I mean, but you got that cape and everything else, and then you got the two feathers in your hat, so that you could be easily recognized. When you was on the board, you got the cape. Every 2 years, the board got new costumes back in because of the wear and tear, because of all the events that you went to and everything else. And I'll tell you this from experience, that cape in the summertime is your worst enemy because it's dull. Buddy, I don't care who you are, you'll sweat. All right. But in the wintertime at Mardi Gras, that is your best friend. That was like Chris, buddy. I mean to tell you. But anyway, they would add 2 or 3 more feathers to it. And then, when you became Lafitte, buddy, you got it. You look like a peacock walking out of that damn room.
4 feathers, quill and a.
Yeah, but I mean, so everybody cussing me because I was the one that started about the boa too. That bow in the back. We were getting costumes. I said, man, look, I said, we got to have it for home. That was back here. I said, everybody cusses me about that bow and everything. That bow is still there. And it looks good, I think. But that's the difference in the costumes and everything else that you see when you come to one of our balls.
I got
So,
questions about the costume.
yes, sir.
When they first started, did they make their own?
No, what they used to do was, when they first started, they went to New Orleans. This is where they would go. There was a couple of board members would go to New Orleans. And then they would take them and get the measurements and they would make them there.
Of course, you're talking about how many people back then.
You're not talking, you're talking less than 100 people. Then they found a costumer in Mobile. Okay. And then we would go to Mobile and make costumes there. And then eventually, I guess it would have been, I guess when I was the president, there was a lady here in town called Nancy. She made them for us. And that's where she did it for a while. And then it's changed hands over the years several times here. Until recently, I mean, who's been making them has done a good job. The ones, do what, Mister? Do what, Mister?
The best you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, with exception. Yeah. Well, with exception of mine. But, I'll have to tell you, being on that board, the costume like over in Mobile, the ones that you dealt with over there, those people, they live in a totally different world than what we do. I mean, they get no rush, no nothing. The morning of the coronation, when Bernie Rummel, who was the one back behind Cliff on there that I was on the board with, I was the second vice president. That morning, they were at the municipal auditorium setting up for the coronation. I showed up at 7 o'clock. Bernie looked at me and he said, I have no board costumes and I have no night costumes. And Jody got in the car and drove to Sims, Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, to a double wide trailer that had been converted into a seamstress shop. And I picked every bit of it all up and brought it back. And then we had to call the people and tell them, so look, come to the auditorium, be costume up. Of course, the board was down there. That was no problem because they were helping set up. But the nights and all that, we had to come to the auditorium and give you a costume. So, yeah.
What follow up on that? The color changes. Any significance to the colors or?
Whatever. Usually the colors in the past, a lot of them had been whatever the float captains were, the knights were just the opposite. Okay, and then as far as the board costumes, the colors of it were picked by the president.
And the color changes with the new members that come.
So, yeah, the new members wouldn't, they'll pick their own now then. So,
Back then, we didn't pick our own.
no. My first, let me tell y'all something. Hey, I told y'all now. Hey, there you go. That's no nation.
I'm thinking, yeah.
I'll tell you. Wow. Yep. They forgot, when I got in, they came down here, and her lady's name was Nancy. She came, she measured and all that. And it was up at the night, we used to have her making it the night from thaw. She measured me, and the next thing I know, they brought my costume in there. And I want you to know that, first of all, it had that stupid ass hat that went around this way, pointing on the inside. It had this little black pirate in the middle of it that I didn't like. But my costume was a deep purple and lavender with pink sequins. I looked at that thing and I went, yeah, bitch. I mean, to tell you, buddy. So, but yeah, those colors and all. But usually the board costume, the president he'll usually choose. And most of the presidents always try to do something that hasn't been done in a while or has never been done. Like when I was, perfect example, like when I was the president, nobody had ever put them in red. All right, so what I did was I had the costume, and Nancy thought I was crazy, because I took an old costume and I went to her house and I said, Nancy, get you some Post-it notes and some straight pens, honey, because we get ready to make the costume. But they were black and red, and they were trimmed in gold, is what the costumes were. And then I had them put red velvet capes and red velvet hats. So, yeah, remember that. But, yeah, and that's what they were. But now the Lafitte costumes that you see up there, all the ones that are Lafitte costumes, those are pretty much between the seamstress and Lafitte themselves. Okay? And everything else. It's basically what they wanted. The crew will pay X amount of dollars. I don't know what it is in the budget now. They will pay X amount of dollars for these costume. And if you want to go above that, buddy, you can have that. I can tell you about that. So, yeah. But that's it. You all right, Liam? I see the ladies are starting to wave. They'll want me to shut up. Getting hot in here.
Jody, there was one.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Over here. How did they come up with Lafitte? When they first started, the name, did they just pull it out of the air?
Harrison Wells. You have to understand Harrison. Okay? Harrison was, he marched to a different beat of the drum. But Harrison was probably the best promoter that you could ever find. Barnum and Staley ain't got crap on him, okay? I ain't kidding. That was just Harrison. And I'll tell you another story about Harrison here in a little bit. But Harrison, he always had this thing about him that everything had to be, secret, and everything and all of that other stuff. So they were sitting back there in Johnny Cox's shoe store and everything else and probably got kicking it around. And Harrison did a lot of history stuff. So Harrison probably, when they said, well, what are we going to call the crew? And Harrison says, well, he said, pirates were around here years ago. And Jean Lafitte was here. And he said, why don't we just call it the Crew of Lafitte and name it after Jean Lafitte, the renegade pirate? Because that's Harrison's train thought. His whole thought process was anything to do with something like that, because Harrison, but he was a promoter. Harrison, he'd come up with an idea, and he can make you want to donate your underwear to it, But I ain't kidding. And that's where a lot of that came from, like with Johnny Cox and the third one picture up there of a guy that looks it's in black and white from where I'm at, which is that gentleman right there. Okay, that's Philo Turner. And Philo Turner's parents owned a automotive business here in Pensacola. It is currently the oldest Chevrolet dealership in the city of Pensacola. And it is what? Pete Moore Chevrolet. Somebody said it. Pete Moore Chevrolet used to be Pensacola Buggy Works. And Philo Turner's parents, they own Pensacola Buggy Works. And every one of the gentlemen up there on the top row in the original 19 were all businessmen, you know, and did one thing or another. Bankers, whatever, they had businesses. And a couple of them were doctors and everything. So that's where they got it from. And so Harrison, I'm sure he probably went through, you know, there's no telling what to get Harrison, you know, come up with the name of the Lafitte. When I was the president, I spent, Harrison's still alive. No, he just died. He died in 2001, I'm sorry. But I spent 3.5 hours sitting in a Waffle House with Harrison, trying to get Harrison to give me all of the stuff he had about the Lafitte. And he would not do it. He would not do it. You know, my mom always said, if you can't say something nice about people, you need to keep your damn mouth shut, okay? But I will tell y'all about Harrison. Harrison, he got it in his head. I mean, I guess it's probably his way of thinking, but Harrison got it in his head that, you know, since he was probably one of them that promoted the original idea of the Lafitte, was in, you know, the charter members and all of that stuff, that basically the Lafitte belonged to him, all right? And he got so crazy with it that they finally just run him out of the crew. I mean, he was that big of a pain in the butt. So, to be nice, and since Harrison was the first president, and the first Lafitte, naturally, he appointed himself as the first Lafitte. When they had the 25th anniversary of the crew of Lafitte at the auditorium, the board got together and they invited Harrison, since Harrison was the first president and the first Lafitte. So Harrison come. 15 minutes after Harrison got there, they were walking Harrison out the front door. Okay, yeah. They were walking Harrison out the front door. He got it started again. So, you have a question? You'll take some. But, yeah. Anybody else got any? Go ahead.
You may not know that. But
I know all.
I don't know your knowledge. I have a tradition with coronation. Have the goblets, have the scepter, we have all of these different things. How did that come into being? Was that from the very beginning or when in?
Most of it came, a lot of the stuff that they do, you have to remember that a lot of these businessmen were in Fiesta. Fiesta was started in 1949. The president of the Chamber of Commerce, or JC's, a man named T.T. Todd, who used to be a produce company here in Pensacola, he started. All right, and then his son carried it on, but his patch closed up. But it was a big produce grocery business. T.T. Todd was the president of Pensacola JC's, and he wanted to create an atmosphere in the summertime to promote tourism within the city of Pensacola. So what he did was they got together and he started talking. So in 1949 is when they decided to create the Fiesta of 5 flags, because Pensacola has flown under 5 flags, 5 different flags. So that's what they did. And that's how it all got started. And they put on a parade, and usually it was on a Thursday afternoon. They did it usually in May. Okay, they had a treasure hunt. If you were here. But they used to have a treasure hunt over Pensacola Beach. They always had a big prize for it. They had a children's treasure hunt for them to go to the beach and do whatever they needed to do, you know, try to find the treasure. And they really promoted it. The biggest attraction, believe it or not, y'all gonna laugh when I tell you this, that everybody just packed Palafox Street for the Fiesta Parade was to watch the Washington High School band. Okay? Because they were high steppers. Washington High School back then was a black school. And their band was what they call high steppers. Now, you know, if you ever You know what a high stepper is? And, but, let me tell you, yeah, it was a show in itself. Here they come. And it was between that, and Bill Davis was the sheriff back then. And Bill Davis always rode a white horse. The black outfit, he always let him have a sheriff's posse. The posse then back then was not comprised of deputy sheriffs. It was comprised of local businessmen. They all rode Palomino ponies. They all went to Mexico and they bought these big black blankets and saddles that had silver conchos all over them. I mean, they looked like Santa Ana and his bunch coming in. Okay, so, but, you know, and then what they would do is they would, where the judicial center is now, they would unload right down there on that south end. And, in order to get the Palomino ponies to step the way they wanted them to step in the parade and do the things that they did, they used to take these rubber bands and they would put them around, you know what, that belonged to the stud Palomino pony. Okay? Yeah. And that way, that old pony, he stepped for it, you know. So Bill Davis had that white horse, that horse would rear up. But that's how it all basically got started. And then from there is when they come up with the idea about Krewe, or Harrison decided that, you know, I'm sure Harrison, knowing Harrison because I knew him personally, the way Harrison thought was it was a thought process for him that he built from 49 to 50 to 51 to 52. He went there, but keep in mind that the whole time he's doing this in his mind, he's going down Palafox Street to Johnny Cox and around there to Philo Turner and all these other people and, you know, Sherman Barnes and all of them. And he's promoting the Krewe. And he's planting that seed. He's giving them that idea. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. So then they started having their meetings at Johnny Cox's shoe store on South Palafox Street. And that's where it all began, was from there. So, but, yeah. So that's how it all came about from there within those years. And then, like I said, they went on, they put the floats together. There was a man named Mr. Hudson that, he lived out off a 9 Mile Road. He had a ranch. But Mr. Hudson, even all the way up to the times that I was even, when I was on the board, in fact, he was out in front. He would lead the #1 float down Palafox Street on horseback. And he always had a crew costume on that horse. And him and that horse would take off and then they'd fire that cannon and it didn't phase that horse. It did not phase that horse. But that's what they had, that's how they did things back then. But like I said, there's been doctors, lawyers, Indian chief, you know. Anybody else, you got any other questions?
No Richmond, Foreman, or Beggarman.
Some of them too.
These two.
Yeah, some of them too. Yeah. Huh? Do what?
There's been few things.
Oh, yeah, there've been stuff with those, I'm sure. I'm not, I'm not sure about all, you know, who did what, but.
Do you have any other questions anywhere in mind?
Go ahead.
There you go.
Hello.
Taking into history what you've been talking about with this one and the other. I've been involved with Mardi Gras for a good 10 years now, but it seems that there's a whole lot of people in this community that do not know the effect of what the Krewe of Lafitte has for them to have the ability to parade in Pensacola at all.
True.
To take that right there, and I will tell you this, you can go back and find articles from the early days when Mardi Gras first came back to Pensacola. And those articles will tell you if it had not been for the existence of the Krewe of Lafitte,
Right.
Mardi Gras would not have survived in Pensacola.
Understanding, of course, the lighted parade on Friday, but then you have everything that goes on at that other time. But just sitting back and taking a look at everything with all that history, it's really not a question, it's just a comment. Basically, it's like, this would not be in existence today if it wasn't for Lafitte.
That's it. You're exactly right. And like I said, you go back and find some of the printed material about it and the articles from the News Journal, all that, and it will tell you in there that if it had not been for the existence of the Krewe of Lafitte and the promotions of the Krewe of Lafitte back then, Mardi Gras would have never lasted, and it would not have gotten to the point to where it is now. You know, a lot of people think that Mardi Gras started in New Orleans. Then started in Mobile. Joe Kane, a man named Joe Kane, went down the street blowing a trumpet. Alright, that's how the Mardi Gras got started in Mobile. And if you go over there now in Mobile on Sunday afternoons during Mardi Gras, one of the parades that starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon is called the Widows of Joe Kane. That's it. They all wear black dresses and black hats and veils and,
Yep.
you know, so that's the Widows of Joe Kane. So, but yeah, but you're absolutely correct about that.
What do you think's gonna happen with Fiesta? Do you think Lafitte is still parade? What's your thought?
You talking about a separate parade,
No.
or within the Fiesta? It depends on what Fiesta wants to do. Yeah, see, they've changed it, I mean.
Well, they have.
Well, they've changed, not only that, but they've changed the name of it because it is no longer the Fiesta of Five Flags.
And
It's
that's
Fiesta of Pensacola. And that's because of the rebel flag. That's the reason they changed the name, believe it or not. Was it that rebel flag thing? Pensacola blew under. Yes, but that's when they changed it. And, they call it, Fiesta of Pensacola, not Fiesta of Five Flags. However, I'll give old Tim, Bryant, he's still running Five Flags Speedway. I'll give it to him.
Fiesta of Five Flags, they
Yeah.
still catch it.
Oh, but, yeah, so, but I don't think as far as Fiesta is concerned with radio, you know, I'm not sure where they're at. I can tell you that, and I'm sure that the board has something worked out with him because, of the magnitude between the barricades, the cleanup, portalets and everything else. And your board of directors, you know, they'll wheel and deal, you know, and stuff like that. And it all got started a couple of years ago, but, they'll get you because the way if you try to fill out a parade application for Fiesta, they will charge you $300 for your first entry.
We're not. We're
Or
not.
is it $450 now? Okay, then
The cars are up.
it was $100 for each one after that.
And now it's like 450, 300, 450, 300. The only crew that's penalized are crew of Lafitte and crew of Aphrodite.
So, there you go. Yep, yep. And the reason I said it,
It's
you know,
crazy.
and then if you don't file the application with Fiesta by like the end of August or sometime in September, they charge you like another $150 for a late fee. And the reason I knew about the $300 and the $100, I didn't know it went up because I put food with it.
Outrageous.
Yeah. I am also a Shriner, and I am the president of what's called the Misfits. Imagine that. How appropriate. How appropriate. The Misfits are a motorized unit at the temple. We have the go-karts and everything else. I have one and everything, and we put them in parades. I tried to put us in the Fiesta parade about 3 years ago, and I sent a email to Fiesta because Shriners is a nonprofit organization. And I asked them about it. They sent me one back and they said, your first car is $300. Every go-kart or golf cart after that is $100 for free. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's wrong.
Well, the thing of it is, I mean, all these organizations that are on the Gulf Coast, and all these parade organizations, they work with it. You know, Navarre Crew Adjusters, Airship Pirates in Milton, they've come a long way. Airship Pirates, they all work with it, you know, and everything else. And I'm sure, I don't know because I'm not on the board anymore. It's been 150 years since I've been on the board of directors around here. But, what it is I'm sure that there's some sort of a reciprocal agreement between the organizations as they go through it. And the other thing is these other organizations, I would think that they are smart enough to understand that they can't find an attraction such as this to put into their parade. Because there is nobody that I know of anywhere that can roll in to a staging area with 3 of the best looking traveling floats that you ever want to see. I mean, equip, music, lights, drunken pirates, everything you want, baby. All rolled into one. And no, what happened was, what happened was on that, see, there's no drinking on the float. It was the street party before the float. So, anybody got any other questions of me? Yes, ma'am.
What is your absolute cleaning crews now?
Everything. Let me tell you what. Yeah. Well, I mean, my son, my son, he come back, I'll tell you, he was 19 years old. I was on the board. Dad, give me in the criddle feet. I said, yeah, when you turn 21. No, Daddy, he said, they'll let me in, because you're on the board. I said, bro. So he turns 21. And he goes, Dad, what? He said, I'm almost 21. I said, you're right about that, buddy. Almost. I said, almost will help you in horseshoes or hand grenades, okay? I said, now, what do you want? Well, you get me in the cross. I said, nope. So he turned 21. When he turned 21, he joined the Crewe Fleet. He's 34. So he's been a float captain, and he was in Lafitte to 69, Lake Piles Court this year. So, but probably the best moment of anything was when I was Lafitte 50. Has to be. It's quite an honor when you got an organization that's 50 years old and you get to represent without a doubt. So, do what?
You're ready to camp.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it, every site, 50 feet have an aid to camp, right? Y'all all know about that? Does everybody know about aid to camp?
No, not really.
Okay, well, every state has an aide de camp, and the aide de camp, what happens is he is supposed to keep Lafitte straight. In other words, okay, he makes sure that Lafitte don't have too much to drink on the float. He makes sure that Lafitte shows up where he's supposed to show up, and that he can walk and talk and chew gum at the same time and everything else, right? Well, that's the aide de camp's job, so Lafitte can go do what he wants to do. Well, when I was with Lafitte, the thing about it is I think all y'all know, of course, and y'all gonna probably think I'm suicidal or something, but I don't drink. All right, okay, I don't drink. But however, I had to make sure that my aide de camp showed it work. It's sitting right here. Yeah, I had to make sure that my aide de camp was where he was supposed to be. No, yeah, well, let me tell you about.
What's wrong?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you all, he probably won't care, and I know, because his wife would probably, he's lucky he's still here. Okay, let me tell y'all, this boy is lucky he's we're at the auditorium, right? So anyway, we've been in the float and everything, and we come back. So I go in the bathroom, and I hear this god-awful noise in the bathroom. And y'all can just imagine what it was. It's somebody that just got off the float that's in there heaving, right? So I walk over there, and guess who is on his hands and knees worshiping the great white goddess of porcelain? So anyway, I walk outside, and we're on the board, right? And his daddy's on the board with him, Tommy. So I walk outside, and I go find Tommy, and I said, Tommy, I said, you need to go in the bathroom, because this will be one of your proudest moments as Justin. And he goes, what is it? I said, he's talking on that white telephone. He said, do what? And I said, I'm going to let you tell his wife, because I ain't going nowhere around there. She don't want me to. Yeah. But he was a good aide de camp. But yeah, he was. So we had a lot of fun here and everything. So, yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Were you the last Lafitte at Bayfront?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought so.
I was the last Lafitte revealed at Bayfront Authority. Then
That was also the last year that we had
Hilliard.
the Hilliard brothers
Yeah.
decorate too. Oh.
Yeah.
They decorated all the balls, all
Yeah.
the year.
There used to be two brothers here in Pensacola that did all the decorations for the flowers. Yeah, and they were something. But there was, my year that I was with they, show you what they did. I mean, when you say there was something about decorating stuff, what they did was they had all these guys. First of all, you have to understand they were brothers and they were gay. If you when you went over to their house to discuss the contract, you sat at a table, and if you kind of looked over here and through this doorway, there was one of them Grecian tubs in there with all these statues around it and everything, you know. And you didn't dare ask what the hell went on in that room. But anyway, they knew their stuff, buddy. I mean, to tell you, they knew their stuff. So anyway, we roll up in front of you. You know, you always go to the hotel and after the parade, and then you have the toast and everything with the court and all of that stuff. You load up and you come down to the auditorium, so I get down there. So anyway, it all starts, and I'm standing back there. And right before that, I mean, of course, all the knights and the maids and all had already been released, but the curtain to start with were closed. And then when the music started, the curtain was open, and there was a 3-tier white cake on that stage. And it said, Lafitte 50th anniversary. And that's how it started. And then, when it all started and people started, so all the knights and the maids got up there and everything else and all that good stuff. And then, when my queen started in everything, they had 2 of them run out there and they rolled it back and they opened that cake up and the whole inside of it was solid red and had 2 chairs sitting side of it for us.
That was Grace, right?
Yep, no,
Yes.
Grace.
Yeah, Bernie's wife, Grace Rumble, was my queen.
That's what I thought.
She was up there, poor Gracie, she didn't know what was going on at the time. When Robert Daddy comes up there, and we're up there and he's doing that sword presentation. You know, he walks up there and it says, and now Master so-and-so, you know, steps forward. You know, President Tommy Brown now takes the sword from Master so-and-so and presents it to Lafitte, saying, I, Tommy Brown, in the year 2004 of our Lord, I do hereby convey to you this emblem of royal authority. Henceforth, you shall be known as John Lafitte the Fifth. Don't remember hearing that? Hey, nobody I got that crap next but anyway. So, but anyway, so I'm standing there and they're standing there and he's trying to keep a straight face to do this right, and she's standing next to me. And I got that mask on and I'm up there and I'm looking at them both and I'm going, I want to sing and dance, I want to sing and dance. And they start laughing, and then everybody knows they're laughing, but they don't know what they're laughing at, you know. And I'm standing there just as straight as I can because I got a mask on and nobody can see what I'm doing. You know? Yeah, but it's been an experience over the years. David, go ahead.
I don't remember, was that before or after your Lafitte year when you took over the MC and your aide de camp took over the music?
Well, I was doing the music the year you were Lafitte.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did exactly with them the year I was. And
Down.
let me think here. Then you'll get me on. Let me go back. So,
It was what, 06?
yes, it was. It was
06.
no. It was David Church. Yeah.
First year, she said.
Yeah, it was right after the emails. It was, yeah, first year with us and with you. Right. Yeah. David, it was the year after. Well, no, it was not the year after. It was, it would have been in six because the next year I had to go in as Lafitte or past Lafitte and stand on the stage.
It was the very next year.
Yeah, so they were still doing, I think Bill Marinas did it or somebody else did it. Yeah, so the first coronation that I emceed would have been Tommy Brown. And then when he was Lafitte, and he was so scared that I was gonna say something. He didn't know what to do. He stood back there at that civic center and he kept looking around. And he kept telling Frank Alvarado, he said, any minute, any minute, any minute, you know, so, but if y'all knew him, Tommy used to have this thing, he had this thing his thing was, you could get around to us. That was it. Everything was you could get around to it. So then when I did introduce him, the last thing I said was, I said, ladies and gentlemen, if you know this Lafitte, you'll get around to it. So, yeah. But, yes, sir.
Are you okay? You need a Coke or anything?
I'm good.
Man, you've been going for an hour and 15
I'm
minutes.
tight, you know.
Well, I'd like to hear the national anthem didn't work.
Yeah, we had that. The sound system failed us, and the national anthem didn't play. So we all sang the national anthem. Okay. Then there was the year that when the board went down there, the Lafitte flag and the American flag both have the base to them. However, the American flag, the actual pole is bigger than the Lafitte flag. So it will not go into the stand that the Lafitte flag's in. Well, when they put them up there, they didn't realize it. So we have the high school ROTC group presenting the colors, right? No, we had the sheriff's office cadets, that's what it was, we had them. So they come in, they present the colors and everything else. Well, we had taken the Raven too, and we had put it in the Civic Center, and I used to stand on top of it. We were up on the very top, and that's where I did it from. When I emceed it was from the top. So, and then the stage was in front of us, right? So this poor little cadet, she's standing there, and she's trying to jam this thing, and it won't go. It won't go, and she doesn't know she's looking, and she's pounding it like that. So I just leaned over and I said, hey, she looked up and I said, give it to me. So she handed me that flag, and what I did was I took it, put it up there on the float, and I hooked it up onto the rail. So the flag hanging out there, and then they left, you know, so that poor child was up there, she banging out with that stick in there, and it wouldn't be right. So, yeah, but that was the first year. It was, when he was, so you can go through the years if you want to, but, Lafitte, the 52nd. And then I have done every one of them with the exception of one since then. All 3 balls.
All right.
Hey, you're good at it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Robert was my sound man, then David took over. David, he come up here with some kind of blankety music one time. I said, well, what's wrong with you? But if anybody got any other questions? All right, yes, ma'am. How many 50 or There's 46. There should be 4. Yeah. Yeah, it should be. One just passed away, so we're down to 3. Well, actually, there've been more because.
Yeah.
Right. Skippy got 50 years and then he passed away, so there was 4. Well, Phil Levine, who was up there, he was a doctor. Phil Levine was a 50-year pirate, and he passed away. And then Skip Weaver passed away. He was a gold pirate. So we're down to 3. So.
Winter's not far from here.
Now Frank's on the water. Yeah. I'm at 40. Yeah. I'm pushing 40 in this old one. Yes, sir.
Most fine pirate.
The most fine pirate.
Sean
Weaver.
John Weaver has been fined $400 total
Wow.
at roughly
Oh, man.
$20 to $25 a pop. If you want to try to out Sean Day's market, you're going to have to go to $1,600 minimum.
Yeah.
And you are not going to be able to do this a lot.
Yeah.
Not going to be able to do the things that
Some of his fires were worth it.
Yeah. But back when they put the strippers on the float, there wasn't even fine on that one. Or back when they had the ones on the float for the whole parade. Yeah. But yeah, Sean would be. Anybody else got anything? Well, I thank y'all for listening to me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. I want you to understand, and he did all of this off the cuff. He was not supposed to be the main speaker. And I will tell you that our main speakers are okay. Everything's good. We'll get them for another time. Wow.
I was just gonna tell y'all, my aide de camp will be outside that door with a hat, so y'all just drop your damn donation. Ain't that good like that?
We appreciate y'all sitting quietly so we can record this. Bar's open.